Imagine sitting in a room where every sound, from the hum of the refrigerator to the distant siren, feels like low to your body. You're trying to find a moment of peace, but your skin feels thin, your mind is racing, and you're strangely on edge. This is the hallmark of the modern epidemic of nervousness. Paramahansa Yogananda, the renowned yogi, provided a startlingly clear insight into this condition. He argued that nervousness isn't just a mental quirk or a lack of willpower. It is a physiological depletion of the life force, or prana, within our very nerves. Think of your body as a sophisticated battery. In Yogananda's view, every one of us has a specific capacity for internal electricity. When we are healthy and calm, our voltage is high. But modern living acts as a source of constant friction. The endless notifications on our phones, the long, draining conversations, and the relentless background noise of the city are like leaks in our electrical system. We are constantly discharging our energy without taking the time to recharge. When your internal voltage drops too low, your nervous system begins to malfunction. Yogananda explained that this is why we experience sudden bouts of restlessness or that uncomfortable burning sensation in our nerves. It's why a sharp word from a friend can feel like an explosion, or why your eyelid starts to twitch for no apparent reason. Your system is literally starving for energy. We are living in a world that demands 100% of our attention 100% of the time, and our batteries are running on empty. Understanding this mismanagement of our internal electricity is the first step towards reclaiming a sense of deep, lasting calm.
To really understand what's happening when you feel on edge, we have to dive into what Paramahansa Yogananda specifically defined as the burning nervous system. This isn't just a colorful metaphor for being stressed out. It describes a very real, energetic process occurring within your subtle anatomy. Think of your nerves not just as biological fibers, but as sophisticated conduits for what the yogis call prana, or astral life energy. In Yogananda's teachings, the brain and the spine serve as the main switchboard for this vital force. When you are centered and calm, the current flows steadily, powering your organs and thoughts with rhythmic harmony. However, when we subject ourselves to sudden emotional outbursts, long, draining conversations, or the constant, invasive barrage of modern background noise, we are essentially cranking up the voltage beyond what our internal wiring was ever designed to handle. Yogananda describes this phenomenon as literally charring the delicate nerve pathways through overactivity. Imagine a light bulb designed for a standard current suddenly being hit with a massive power surge. The filament doesn't just glow brighter, it begins to disintegrate. When our nervous system is burning, it means the astral energy is overstimulated to the point of causing a literal short circuit in our internal wiring. This is precisely why you experience that maddening sense of restlessness. You might be physically exhausted, your body practically begging for sleep, yet your mind is racing and your limbs are twitching. You can't sit still because the energy is leaking or jumping the tracks. It's a biological and spiritual intersection where the prana is no longer contained within the proper channels. This habitual twitching is the physical evidence of those charred pathways struggling to transmit the life force smoothly. Understanding that this is a structural, energetic issue is the first step towards cooling the system down.
Consider for a moment the invisible ocean you're swimming in right now. It isn't water, but sound. Paramahansa Yogananda offered a profound and often overlooked insight into nervous system burnout, the environment we inhabit, specifically the relentless presence of background noise. He emphasized that our auditory nerves are among the most sensitive conduits for energy in the entire human body. They aren't just biological mechanisms for hearing, they are incredibly delicate channels for prana, or life force. Think about your typical day. There's the low-frequency hum of the refrigerator, the distant rumble of city traffic, the whir of a computer fan, or the high-pitched buzz of electronics. You might think you've successfully tuned them out, but your nervous system certainly hasn't. Yogananda argued that this constant exposure acts as a persistent, invisible drain on your internal vitality. In modern physiological terms, this auditory pollution keeps your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mechanism, in a state of low-grade, chronic activation. Even if you aren't consciously feeling stressed, your body is perpetually bracing itself against these sonic vibrations. This is a critical barrier to true healing. When the sympathetic system is stuck in the on position, the body cannot enter the deep parasympathetic state required for actual nerve regeneration. It's like trying to recharge a battery while all the lights are still drawing power. This constant drainage prevents the nerves from reaching that state of being calm, cool, and collected, which Yogananda identified as the essential prerequisite for spiritual clarity. Without intentional periods of true silence, the nerves remain brittle and overstimulated, often leading to habitual twitching. To find peace, we must recognize that silence isn't just the absence of noise. It is the literal medicine our nervous system requires to stop burning out and start rebuilding.
Beyond the environmental triggers we've discussed, Paramahansa Yogananda pointed to a much more subtle yet pervasive source of nerve exhaustion: our social interactions. Specifically, he warned about what he called energy leaks. Think about the last time you spent hours in a long, aimless conversation, or found yourself caught in a cycle of gossip and disharmony. You likely walked away feeling physically heavy, mentally foggy, or even strangely hollow. Yogananda explained that this isn't just social fatigue. It's a literal dissipation of your prana, or life force. When we speak without a clear purpose or engage in talk that lacks peace, we are essentially projecting our vital energy outward in a disorganized, chaotic fashion. Every word we utter requires a specific expenditure of nerve energy. When that speech is restless, reactive, or unkind, that energy is scattered rather than focused. It's helpful to imagine your nervous system as a sophisticated internal battery. When you engage in meaningful, calm communication, the battery drains slowly and efficiently. But aimless chatter is like a short circuit, causing the energy to spark and bleed out until the battery is completely depleted. This is why you might feel physically drained after a party, even if you weren't moving around much. Your nerve energy was scattered through restless communication, leaving your system running on empty. Yogananda taught that by practicing conscious speech and intentional periods of silence, we can plug these leaks. He urged us to realize that our words are not free. They are fueled by the very vitality that keeps our nerves steady. By interiorizing our energy and choosing silence over superficial noise, we allow our nervous system to recharge and finally find that elusive state of calm. Paramahansa Yogananda often described our nervous system like a delicate circuit board. Imagine a house wired for standard lamps suddenly getting hit by a massive surge from a power station. That's exactly what happens when we experience sudden, violent emotions. Yogananda called these internal electrical storms. Think about the last time you felt a flush of blinding anger, a surge of paralyzing fear, or even a sudden wave of intense grief. In that split second, your brain isn't just processing a feeling. It's discharging a high-voltage current through your nerves that they simply aren't prepared to carry. Here is the startling reality Yogananda taught. One single moment of violent temper can cause more damage to your nervous system than an entire week of grueling physical labor. Think about that for a second. You could work in a field or lift heavy weights for 7 days straight, and your body would naturally recover with rest and food. But that one explosive argument or intense bout of shouting, it leaves a lasting scorch mark on your internal wiring. This happens because the load of the emotion far exceeds the electrical capacity of the nerve filaments. When these emotional spikes happen repeatedly, the nerves never truly return to a baseline of calm. They stay in a state of chronic, high-frequency vibration. This is the root of what many modern doctors struggle to diagnose. You might have persistent twitching in your eyelid, a restless leg that won't stop moving, or a general sense of burning or restlessness in your limbs. These aren't just physical glitches. They are the debris of emotional shocks. These currents create a kind of static in your system, manifesting as chronic anxiety that feels like it's coming from nowhere. To truly heal, we have to understand that our nerves are living batteries that require us to be mindful of the emotional voltage we allow to flow through them.
Paramahansa Yogananda often pointed out a specific physical manifestation of inner turmoil that many of us overlook: habitual twitching, or what we might today call restless limb syndrome. He observed a direct, almost mathematical correlation between the state of the mind and the state of the muscles. If the mind is jumping from thought to thought without control, a state of high mental entropy, the body will inevitably mirror that chaos through involuntary movements.
Think about the times you've sat in a long, taxing meeting or a stressful social situation. Do you start tapping your foot incessantly? Do your fingers drum rhythmically on the table? These aren't just idle habits or minor annoyances. Yogananda explained that these movements act as safety valves. When the nervous system is flooded with more life force or energy than the conscious mind can calmly direct, that excess energy has to find an exit. It leaks out through the extremities. It's effectively the body's way of trying to discharge a high-voltage current that the internal wiring can no longer safely contain. Yogananda emphasized the law that a jumping mind creates a jumping body. This isn't just a poetic metaphor. It's a physiological feedback loop involving an overstimulated sympathetic nervous system. When you notice these micromovements, a twitching eyelid, a bouncing knee, or a restless hand, you are actually seeing a physical warning light on your dashboard. It is your body signaling that your nervous system is reaching its breaking point. By recognizing these physical cues early, we can begin to intervene. Instead of allowing our life force to dissipate in jagged, uncontrolled bursts that eventually lead to total burnout, we can use these signs as a prompt to steady the mind, thereby stilling the body and preserving our vital energy. When we look at Yogananda's perspective on health, everything circles back to the central pillar of the human machine, the spine and the brain. He didn't just view these as bone and gray matter, he saw them as the primary antenna for the soul. At the very base of the brain lies the medulla oblongata, a small but vital point that Yogananda poetically called the mouth of God. This isn't just a spiritual metaphor. In his yogic philosophy, this is the specific gateway through which cosmic energy, or prana, enters the physical body from the surrounding universe. Think of your nervous system as a complex electrical grid. For the lights to stay on without flickering, the current must flow steadily from the power station. Nervousness, that burning sensation in the limbs, or that persistent restlessness that won't let you sit still, is essentially a power surge or a brownout caused by a blockage. When you carry deep physical tension in your shoulders or neck, or when mental distress creates a kink in your psychological hose, you obstruct the flow of this cosmic energy. The medulla is the intake, and the spine is the main transmission line. If the line is crooked, rigid, or stressed, the energy cannot reach the rest of the body effectively. This is why spinal alignment is so critical in Yogananda's teachings. A slumped posture or a rigid, stressed spine acts like a dam against the divine current. When the flow is blocked, the nerves become starved and exhausted, leading to habitual twitches or that feeling of being overstimulated by the slightest background noise. However, when the spine is straight and the mind is calm, the life force flows freely from the brain down to every single nerve ending. In that state of clear conduction, nervousness simply vanishes. You aren't just relaxing your muscles, you are realigning your internal battery with the infinite source of all energy.
When Paramahansa Yogananda spoke about the nervous system in the early 20th century, he described it as a delicate instrument designed to channel cosmic energy. But today, we are subjecting this instrument to a level of sensory bombardment that is historically unprecedented. Think about the modern digital landscape. We aren't just looking at screens, we are participating in a continuous cycle of what could be called microshocks. Every time your phone pings, every time a red notification badge flashes, and every time you engage in the infinite scroll, your nervous system receives a tiny electrical and emotional trigger. These triggers demand an immediate, even if subconscious, response. In Yogananda's terminology, this keeps the nerves in a state of high-frequency vibration. Normally, the nervous system is meant to alternate between activity and deep rest, a state where the life force, or prana, withdraws from the external sensory portals and retreats into the spine for recharge. However, the constant blue light and the rapid-fire influx of data act as a barrier to this retreat. The blue light specifically mimics daylight, tricking the pineal gland and keeping the brain in a state of high alert. Because the stimuli are constant, the life force is perpetually pulled outward. It never gets that chance to settle into the spinal reservoirs. Imagine a battery that is constantly being drained faster than it can be plugged in. Eventually, the cells begin to degrade. This is the root of the burning sensation many feel today, a literal overexhaustion of the subtle electrical currents in the body. When we are overstimulated, we aren't just tired, we are vibrationally depleted, leading to that restless, twitchy anxiety that characterizes the modern burnout.
Think of your body not just as a collection of muscles and nerves, but as a biological battery. Most of us assume that if we are feeling fried or restless, we simply need a sandwich or a long nap. But Paramahansa Yogananda offered a much deeper perspective on this exhaustion. He taught that our physical form is essentially a body battery, and nervousness is the flashing red light on your internal dashboard, warning you that your charge is critically low. Here is the fundamental shift in thinking. Yogananda argued that we do not just derive energy from secondary sources like food and oxygen. While those are necessary for the physical hardware, the actual electricity, the life force, comes from the cosmic energy surrounding us. He described the medulla oblongata at the base of the brain as the mouth of God, the primary gateway where this universal energy flows into the body. So why do we feel nervous? It is because we are dissipating that energy faster than we are receiving it. We leak our power through uncontrolled emotions, mindless chatter, and sensory overload. Nervousness is essentially energy in a state of chaos, spraying out of a depleted system like sparks from a frayed wire. The cure, therefore, isn't just passive rest, it is the scientific reaccumulation of that energy. This is where the power of the human will comes in. Yogananda famously taught that the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. By consciously directing your attention inward and using your willpower, you can actually pull that cosmic energy back into your nervous system. You become a conscious recharger. Instead of being at the mercy of every background noise or stressful conversation, you learn to plug back into the source. It is about moving from a state of accidental depletion to a state of intentional, focused accumulation. When you strengthen the will, you stabilize the nerves, turning that burning sensation back into a steady, calm glow of vitality. We often think of nervousness as purely psychological, but Paramahansa Yogananda pointed to something far more physical, our diet, specifically how we fuel the life current within us. He used a striking term to describe what happens when we rely on stimulants like caffeine and refined sugar. He called it false fire. It's an incredibly apt metaphor. Think about the way a pile of dry brush burns. It's intense, hot, and gone in seconds, leaving only scorched earth behind. That's exactly what happens to your nerves. When you consume these stimulants, you aren't actually creating new energy. You're forcibly extracting stored energy from your nerve cells. This creates a temporary surge that feels like alertness, but it is inevitably followed by a devastating crash. In that aftermath, the nerve tissues are left even more sensitive, brittle, and prone to irritation than they were before. It's a cycle of depletion that many of us mistake for productivity. Yogananda explained that the body operates on a delicate internal current. When we bombard the system with excessive sugar or caffeine, we're essentially short-circuiting that current. Imagine trying to run a massive high-voltage charge through a wire designed for a low-intensity lamp. Eventually, the insulation, which in our bodies is the protective sheath of the nerves, begins to fray and burn. The goal, therefore, isn't to whip the nerves into action with a temporary spark, but to cool and rebuild them. A diet focused on nerve health is about finding stability. It's about choosing foods that act as a steady, slow-burning fuel. To stop that sensation of a burning nervous system, we must stop feeding the false fire and instead provide the cooling nutrients that allow the life current to flow smoothly without the constant threat of a blowout.
One of the most powerful and immediate antidotes Paramahansa Yogananda prescribed for a burning nervous system is the deliberate, disciplined practice of silence and seclusion. When your nerves feel like they're literally on fire, it's usually because they've been trapped in a state of perpetual, exhausting reaction. Think about it. Every smartphone notification, the low-frequency hum of the air conditioner, and even the micro flickers of light in your room are constant demands on your vital energy. Yogananda referred to the remedy as silence therapy. It's far more than just being quiet. It's a physiological necessity. Consider your brain as a high-performance operating system.
When you have too many background processes running, like constant auditory processing or social scanning, the system starts to lag and overheat. This is nervous system burnout. Silence therapy acts as a total system reboot. By cutting off that external data stream, you allow the auditory and visual nerves to finally cease their firing. This rest is vital because these specific nerves are massive energy consumers. But Yogananda took it further, into the realm of bioenergy. He explained that our life force, or prana, is typically dissipated and scattered across the surface of the body, reacting to every external whim. Through seclusion, you build an internal sanctuary. You are essentially summoning that energy back from the periphery. Instead of being leaked through the eyes and ears, the life force retreats from the surface, drawing back into the deep vital centers located in the spine. In this deep quiet, the burning sensation subsides because the electrical load on the peripheral nerves is finally lifted. You are no longer just surviving the noise, you are recharging your internal battery, allowing the spine to become a reservoir of peace. If you are currently grappling with that burning sensation in your nerves, or a mind that simply won't stop racing, Yogananda offered a very specific, practical solution, his system of energization exercises. These aren't your typical gym routines. They are a scientific method for consciously tapping into cosmic energy and directing it to every cell, particularly the nervous system. The engine behind this entire system is a profound principle. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. Imagine your willpower as a dial on a powerful machine. When you increase that dial, you aren't just thinking hard, you are literally opening the spiritual floodgates for life force to enter the body. In these exercises, you learn to tense specific body parts with focused intent, moving from low to medium to high tension, and then relaxing in reverse. This isn't just about building muscle, it's about flushing out the nervous system. Think of your nerves like a delicate circuit board that's become corroded by the toxins of restlessness and overstimulation. When you apply this focused tension and relaxation, you are effectively surging a clean current through those circuits, clearing away the metabolic and emotional debris left behind by sudden emotions, long conversations, or background noise. By consciously directing this energy, you replace that scattered, twitchy feeling with what Yogananda called a steady, calm vitality. It is a state of being fully charged but perfectly still. You aren't just resting, you are actively revitalizing the very fabric of your nervous system. By mastering the relationship between your will and your energy, you transform your body from a source of agitation into a fortress of peace, ensuring that even the most draining environment cannot deplete your inner battery. To truly understand how to heal a burning nervous system, we have to look at the relationship between the mind and the body through the lens of Paramahansa Yogananda's profound teachings. He famously compared the mind to a vast lake. In its natural, healthy state, the water is crystal clear and perfectly still, reflecting the truth of our inner being. But when we are gripped by nervousness or chronic overstimulation, it's as if a violent wind has whipped that lake into a frothy, turbulent storm. Those ripples, our frantic, reactive thoughts, distort the reflection and keep the body in a state of high alert. The primary tool Yogananda offered to still these waters is meditation, specifically through techniques focused on the breath. There is a direct physiological mechanism at play here. The heart and the lungs are inextricably linked. By consciously slowing the breath, we naturally decrease the heart rate and quiet the nervous system's electrical activity. This isn't just superficial relaxation. It leads to a state Yogananda called the paralysis of peace. It's a striking term, isn't it? It describes a state of such profound interior stillness that the life force, or prana, is withdrawn from the distal sensory nerves and concentrated in the spine and brain. In this state, the body enters a regenerative phase that is actually far deeper than what occurs during ordinary sleep. While sleep provides a subconscious rest for the muscles, this meditative paralysis of peace allows the nerves to heal at a cellular level, cooling the burning sensation of burnout. By focusing the attention and calming the breath, you move from the stormy surface of the lake to the silent, unshakable depths where true healing resides. Inner poise isn't just a fancy phrase. For Paramahansa Yogananda, it was the structural blueprint for a healthy life. When we talk about chronic nervousness, the long-term objective is to achieve a state where you are, in his famous words, calmly active and actively calm. Now, what does that actually mean? It's the ability to perform your duties with maximum efficiency and energy. That's the active part, while your internal state remains as still as a deep mountain lake. Most of us do the opposite. We are nervously active and stagnantly calm. Training the nervous system to remain steady during a crisis starts with small, daily interactions. Yogananda taught that we must practice detachment. This is often misunderstood. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about your family, your job, or your health. It means you stop allowing external events to dictate the voltage of your internal state. Think of your nerves like electrical wires. If you let every loud noise, every sharp word, or every deadline pump 220 volts through a 110-volt wire, the insulation eventually burns off. That's nervous burnout. By cultivating internal stability, you create a buffer. You observe the chaos without becoming the chaos. When a crisis hits, an untrained nervous system reacts with a spike in cortisol and a frantic scattering of energy, those habitual twitches and restlessness we've discussed. But the person who has practiced being actively calm keeps their internal voltage regulated. This resilience is what protects your physical nerves from that painful burning sensation. You become like a master electrician of your own soul, ensuring that no matter how high the external pressure gets, your internal circuit remains cool, steady, and unbreakable. It is this poise that transforms a fragile nervous system into a pillar of strength.
To truly address the burning in your nervous system, we have to look at the physiological secret Yogananda emphasized, the spiritual eye. Located at the point between the eyebrows, this is known as the center of Christ consciousness, or the Kutastha. Think of your spine as a living battery. When you're gripped by nervousness, that energy is usually sinking or scattered in the lower centers of the spine, the regions associated with basic survival, instinct, and fear. By consciously focusing your internal attention at the spiritual eye, you are essentially changing the polarity of your entire energy field. You're pulling that restless, chaotic energy upward toward the higher brain. Yogananda taught that this isn't just a simple mental visualization. It is a profound, measurable shift in your internal bioelectricity. When our energy is centered in the higher brain, specifically the frontal lobes, the entire body naturally enters a state of equilibrium. The nervous system stops firing in that frantic, overstimulated way that leads to twitching or mental exhaustion. That burning sensation you feel when stressed is essentially the friction of energy being pushed through resistance in the lower centers. But when you draw it up, the experience changes entirely. The burning is replaced by a cooling, soothing sense of well-being. It's like pouring fresh, cold water over a radiator that's been redlining for hours. By keeping your gaze and your inner focus at that point between the eyebrows, even during your daily activities, you're training your nervous system to inhabit its higher home. This is the ultimate antidote to the burnout caused by background noise, sudden emotions, or long, draining conversations. You become polarized toward peace, anchoring your awareness in a place where restlessness simply cannot exist. It's not just a meditation technique, it's a physiological reset. As we reflect on the legacy of Paramahansa Yogananda, it's clear he offered far more than just a temporary reprieve from stress. He provided a rigorous roadmap for self-mastery, treating the human nervous system as the ultimate instrument for spiritual realization. We've identified how the frictions of modern life, the incessant background noise, the draining nature of long-winded conversations, and the sudden, jagged spikes of emotion create what he called a burning nervous system. This is a state of physiological burnout, where our internal batteries are depleted faster than they can ever be recharged. The resolution Yogananda offered is both practical and transformative. By practicing conscious silence, we learn to plug the energy leaks caused by idle chatter. By adopting a diet that supports nerve health, choosing pure, vitalizing foods, we literally rebuild the physical structure of our biological conductors. And most importantly, through deep, scientific meditation, we tap into a cosmic source of energy that recharges the nerves far beyond what sleep or food ever could. Ultimately, these teachings transform the body from a site of restlessness and habitual twitching into a radiant conduit for peace.
The goal is to achieve that peace which passeth all understanding. This is not just a poetic sentiment, it is the physiological reality of an unshakable, steady system. When your nerves are fully recharged and your inner life is anchored, you no longer react to the external storm. You become the eye of that storm. You discover that your inner joy is not a fragile thing dependent on the world being quiet, but a powerhouse of light that remains steady regardless of the chaos outside. This is the lasting legacy of his work, a life lived in complete, masterful tranquility.